Hello, I'm Trey and welcome to another of my colouring videos. With this video I'm going to focus on how I choose colour. I haven't actually done a video just on this, so I thought it might be useful. For me, colour is very important to how a project turns out, and finding harmony and balance within the project is all down to the colours that you choose. Now, I tend to mostly use a colour wheel. Sometimes I will go on design seeds or Pinterest and look for colour palettes, but quite often I use a colour wheel. Now, I'm not an expert in colour theory, but I do have a little bit of knowledge that I'll share with people, because I tend to be very what you would call keep things simple. I don't like complicated. It just makes everything too difficult when you're trying to do a colour project. I want nice and simple. So for me, the colour wheel is the primary colours, and which is your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple and lilac. But there are different shades that, so you've got your tints, which are the lighter shades, and they are when you add white to your primary colour. So you add white underneath your primary colour and you get a paler shade of it. If you put grey underneath the primary colour, you get a darker shade. And that's how most of the tints and shades are worked out when you come to colour. The other thing I find interesting and useful is knowing what the cool colours are and what the warm colours are, depending on what I want to try and create in a effect in a colouring project. Now, the cool colours are your purples, your lilacs, your blues and your greens. And the warm colours are yellow, orange, red and reddy pink, or purple as it's described. And in some ways it's kind of common sense, you know, when you look at colours you kind of naturally notice when they're warm and when they're cool. Now these colours, if you use a palette of colours, all the cool colours, then your project will look cool. And if you use all the warm colours, your project will look warm. And if you bring into it the tints, if you went for paler tints, you get a more subtle warm effect, say, or a more subtle cool effect. If you go for the darker shades, you get a darker effect with your warm and a darker effect with your cool. So they're the other two things I tend to think about, you know, what shade or tint I'm going to use, and if it's a warm on the warm colour section or the cool colour section. Now for ease, because it can be quite complicated thinking about colours, I use a colour wheel where it's already been worked out, and I use this quite a lot. So you've got your complementary colours, which are two colours that complement each other on the colour wheel. So in this example it's green and red. Now we always say that red and green should never be seen, but actually they work really well together, which is why probably Christmas colours really pop. So if you look at the warm and the cool colours, the green is in the cool and the red is in the warm, and that gives it that contrast, that pop. And the analog kind of colours, which is 3 in a row, with this example it's blue and green and a pale green, which is a yellowy green. So if you looked at that on the colour wheel, blue, green and yellowy green is cool. But if you move that slightly and go for green, yellowy green and yellow, then you can incorporate it cool and warm. Because with all of these, they can be moved across, they can move along. So for instance, if you went for blue on the colour wheel and you wanted to see what the contrast was, you go across and you get orange. and if you go for a darker blue, you'll get a lighter orange going towards yellow. So all of these colour combinations, you move them along on where your starting colour is, and you count along. That's why I use this a lot. And you change your colour combinations. So for that one, it's a square combination. You've got a blue, a red, a yellow and a green. But if you move that slightly, you go from purple, orange, green, blue. And it works it out slightly differently. And the same with all these combinations. You just move it across, count your way around the colour wheel to get your other combinations. So you don't have to stick with what's on the examples. You just move your starting colour. And again, a lot of these, if you notice, combine warm and cool. Especially these two quite often combine warm and cool. And they have a really good interest and contrast. So the warm and cool here, you've got your two cools and your two warm. Same here, two cools, two warm, and that happens as you move it across. It'll always stay two cool and two warm, and these two are the ones I use the most when I choose my colours. Now I'm going to just touch on how that's worked for me in different projects. A bigger project can have lots of elements, and you can quite often think, oh, I've got lots of colours to use and I'll throw all these colours. However, when we looked at the combinations, what works best is certain colours together. So I tend to find the most colours I use quite often is 4 colours, because they work best together, and I choose my combination on the colour wheel. So for this one, I went for 4 colours, and that was green, brown, blue and yellow with a touch of orange. So orange and yellow on the colour wheel are very close together. So I tend to use those quite a lot, orange and yellow as a combination. Quite often with red, orange and yellow as well. So it actually looks like one colour quite often in a project. But when I was doing this, I did my blue and I did my browns, and that they all work quite nicely together, because blue and red actually create the brown. And when it came to the greens, it kind of went wrong for me, because I used the wrong shade of green. I wanted a different colour green for these foliage, otherwise they all kind of look the same, and I used a wrong colour for part of it, and it went really wrong. It kind of looked muddy and it didn't work in with the rest of my colour palette. So I ended up going for a bluey green, which then worked much better and complemented the blue in the flowers. So quite often if I'm doing a project and I feel like it's going wrong, it's the colours I've chosen. It is the colours I've chosen. The other thing I tend to work out is my balance of where things are. Putting colour down when you've got a lot of detail, working out where those colours go, can give it a nice balance, harmony. So I kind of sit and look at a project before I even start putting colour down, and I decide what elements are going to be in what colour. So I tend to go for the biggest thing first, say these flowers, there's lots of them, what is that going to be? And then I work it out after that. I pick up the same colour in different sections, and that gives you that balance again as it's moving through the project. So that's one thing I tend to do. Sometimes I'm trying to create an effect, and I have a little bit of a experiment. And with this project, my experiment was to combine blue, purple and pink, because I wanted to create this hair effect. Now, on the colour wheel, blue and purple are very close together and it goes into the pink. So I knew that those colours would work really nice together. If you see these ones here, this combination here, if you started at this blue and went that way, you would get that combination, that subtle moving from one shade to the other. So that's what I did with the face, the lips, the eyes and the hair, and that's why I felt that worked really nice. It's such a subtle, balanced effect. But obviously I had all these other elements to put in. So I decided on going on a contrasting effect. So the green and the red contrast, and of course brown and blue are a combination of red. Brown is a combination of red and blue if you mix them together. So I knew the brown were working well with the blue and the contrast would be with the red and the green. And that worked really well. It was a nice experiment, and I really like how that worked. So sometimes it's interesting to pull in subtle cool colours with a splash of warm. Sometimes though you might want to work mostly in one tones of colours. So for instance with this one, this is a colour combination of mostly cool colours. So my greens, my greys, my blues and my pinks, apart from the hair, is all in cool colours, and that gives it a cool, but because I use the lighter shades, as the colours, as in the tints with the white underneath it, it's a bright cool and it looks really crisp, and that's what the effect I wanted for this project, because it's a Christmas winter kind of design. And again, that works really well. I mean, I even use a cool tone of blue in the eyes, so it all worked in quite nicely. One of the nicest effects I like is the complementary colours, where they tend to make something jump out. So you've got one colour and then you do the complementary contrasting colour to go with it. So I started with the blue, which is in the cool, and there's your blue, dark blue, but I wanted it to be going into the warm colours. So I went with the greens, which is going into the warm colours, the lighter greens, and the pinks that was into the warm colours. And that gave it a nice contrast between that blue and those other two colours, and they really stand out. The pink and the green really stand out from the base background, and I really like that effect. I quite often do contrasting colours within a project to make something stand out from the background or the main colour in the project. This one I went for again the contrasting effect. So you've got your lilac-y colours, and opposite those is your yellows going into orange. And quite often, if I want to darken a yellow, I will go into orange to give it that darker effect. And with this, I used 3 colours mostly. Shades of lilac and purple, and shades of yellow and orange with a little bit of red. And restricting the colours like that made a really dramatic effect and really interesting. So I often do this. I often restrict my colours to maybe 2 or 3 colours, and it gives it a interesting effect at the end. It stands out more, and quite often it looks quite balanced as well. It's not fussy. So quite often for me, if I'm doing colours, a colour combination, I prefer less colours than more colours. And just to prove that red and green can be seen, I wanted this deer to look festive. So I went for festive shades of red and green with a touch of yellow. And the yellow was to give it the shaded effect. I wanted a bit of lighter effect because this was a pointillism shade and design. So the green and the red work really well, and it looks really festive, which is probably why quite a lot of Christmas stuff does look really nice. So just to prove that green and red go together, there you go. So I hope people have found this interesting. Working on the basics of your colours really does make a difference with your finished projects. It can make a bold effect, it make a subtle effect, you can make a cool effect and make a warm effect. So all these charts that I've shown today, they're all on the internet. You can download them, and they're really handy to refer to every time you do a project. So when you come to do a project, the first thing I would suggest is you look at your colours, you look at your elements, and you work out how it's going to work together and where you're going to put the colours within that project. So I'll say bye for now, and I'll return soon with another colouring project tutorial.